The moon hung low over the African savanna, casting a silvery glow across the red earth. A whisper cut through the silence, chilling the night air. She was sent to kill him, but what she discovered would change everything. In the heart of the Sahel, under the scorching sun and endless dust, a whisper had started to grow into a roar. Ibrahim Traore, a leader of the revolution, had become a symbol for the oppressed and a threat to the powerful. His rise was not just a political one, it was spiritual. He had become a voice for those who had none, a leader who stood for something more than himself. His words echoed in the hearts of many, and his very name began to resonate across borders, stirring up hope in those who had long since lost it. But with power came fear, and those who had thrived off the suffering of others feared the changes he represented. But there were those who would stop at nothing to see him fall. The queen of the forgotten kingdom of Zuri was among them. Once the heart of a thriving civilization, her kingdom had been ravaged by foreign powers, manipulated by political schemes, and abandoned by allies. Her kingdom, now broken, was merely a shadow of what it had been. Zuri, raised on the ideals of strength through control, had been taught that power came from domination. She had known no other way. But everything she had built and believed in had begun to crumble beneath her, like the very ruins of her kingdom. When a shadowy figure from a rival power approached her with a dangerous proposition, an offer she could not refuse, she felt the heavy weight of her kingdom's future on her shoulders. She was tasked with an impossible mission: eliminate Ibrahim Traore. Her every instinct screamed at her to comply, to do as she was told and rid the world of the threat he posed. It was a straightforward order, a simple mission for someone in her position. But it was anything but simple. The days leading up to her mission were filled with doubt. Zuri spent her nights in the royal palace, staring at the ancient dagger that had been passed down through generations of queens before her. The weapon was as cold and unforgiving as the world she had come to know, and yet its presence seemed to weigh more heavily on her with each passing hour. She had always been taught that a queen's power lay in her ability to make difficult decisions, to strike down her enemies without hesitation. Yet here, standing alone with her thoughts, she began to question everything. Was she truly willing to carry out such an order? Was she willing to destroy a man who, for all his flaws, represented something much larger than himself? She couldn't help but wonder if the stories about him were true. Was he the tyrant the world made him out to be, or was there more to his mission? Would killing him serve her kingdom, or would it only leave her with blood on her hands and a heavy heart? Zuri stood in the mirror of her chamber, the weight of her dagger pressing against her palm. She tried to steel herself for what lay ahead, but her heart was in turmoil. Every fiber of her being told her that she was about to make a choice that would change everything, not just for her, but for the future of her people. The next morning she would meet Ibrahim Traore face to face. She would either succeed in her mission or face the consequences of her hesitation. Her chief of guards, Kofi, entered the room quietly, as he always did. He stood in the doorway, watching her with a look that was both reverent and anxious. "My queen," he said softly, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that hovered in the air. "The decision you make tomorrow will not just affect your future, it will change the fate of this kingdom." Zuri's eyes were cold as she looked at him, her resolve hardening once again. "I know what I must do," she replied, though her voice betrayed a slight tremor. "But I wonder if the world will see me as a queen of strength or a queen of murder." Kofi said nothing, his eyes filled with unspoken thoughts, but his gaze lingered on her for a moment before he left the room. Zuri was left alone again, her thoughts racing. She had always believed that power lay in the ability to destroy, to crush her enemies beneath her feet. But now, faced with the reality of what she had been asked to do, she wondered if there was another way. The next morning, she set out toward Ibrahim Traore's stronghold, the dusty roads of the Sahel stretching endlessly before her. Her thoughts were clouded, and a part of her dreaded what lay ahead. This wasn't just a political move. It was personal. The tension between her duty and her own emerging doubts gnawed at her as the miles passed. Was this the end of the road, for her as a leader? Or was it the beginning of something else? As she neared his camp, she caught her first glimpse of the man she had come to destroy. Ibrahim stood alone, a silhouette against the barren landscape, his posture both powerful and serene. Zuri felt a strange flutter in her chest, one she could not explain. His presence was commanding, but there was no aggression in his stance, no fear. There was only peace, a peace that unsettled her more than any weapon ever could. He saw her approach, and without hesitation, stepped forward to greet her. His eyes locked with hers in a way that made her feel as though he had already seen into the very depths of her soul. "Queen Zuri," he said, his voice calm but laced with an unshakable confidence. "I've been expecting you." Zuri's hand gripped the hilt of the dagger at her side, but something in his gaze made her hesitate. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she could go through with it. Was this truly her enemy, or had she been misled? "I've come to do what I must," she said, her voice low but steady, though her heart was racing. "But tell me, Ibrahim Traore, what makes you so different from all the others who have tried to control us?" Ibrahim smiled softly, almost as if he were relieved. "I'm not here to control you, Zuri," he replied. "I'm here to show you something different, something greater." His words pierced her heart, but she did not want to listen. Instead, she drew her dagger, moving toward him with a deadly purpose. But as she reached him, something in her faltered. The dagger felt heavier than it ever had before, and her chest tightened with the weight of the decision she was about to make. Before she could strike, Ibrahim stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You don't have to do this," he said softly, his voice low and filled with a quiet intensity. "I know what you've been told. I know the stories that have been whispered in your ear. But this is not the truth. We are not enemies, Zuri. We are both pawns in a game that has been played by those who hold all the power." Zuri stared at him, her heart racing. She didn't know what to say, what to believe. The world she had known, one of violence, power, and fear, was beginning to unravel before her. But she couldn't ignore the truth in his words. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she lowered her dagger. "I came here to kill you," she whispered. "But now I'm not so sure anymore." Ibrahim's eyes softened. "You don't have to be a killer. You're not a tool of destruction, Zuri. You are a queen. And queens don't rule through fear. They rule through wisdom, through compassion, through unity. Let us stand together, not as enemies, but as allies." In that moment, something inside her shifted. The weight of her decision, the burden she had carried for so long, began to lift. She was no longer bound by the chains of power that had once defined her. She was free to choose a different path, one of unity, one of hope. Zuri looked up at Ibrahim, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Then, let's rise together," she said softly. And with that, the two of them turned toward the horizon, knowing that the road ahead would not be easy, but that it was the only road worth walking. As the sun set behind them, casting a golden light over the desert, Zuri felt a sense of peace wash over her, one that she had never known. The world may have tried to break her, to use her as a tool of destruction. But in that moment, she had chosen a new path, a path of healing, of transformation. And together, she and Ibrahim Traore would lead their people into a new dawn. One, built not on bloodshed, but on unity and hope. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected kindness. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs it today.